Welcome to BeyondBIM. Today we are excited to bring to you a short series of episodes from the illustrious co-authors of a newly published book, which is titled Construction 4.0, an innovation platform for the built environment. This book best describes the Construction 4.0 in the context of its current state, emerging trends and technologies, and the people and process issues that surround the coming transformation of this sector. The book is now readily available on Amazon as Kindle or hardback. In this episode, we will discuss innovation in construction project delivery with a leading expert from Autodesk. Joining us in today's episode is the co-author Ken Stowe of the chapter titled Innovation to the Construction Project Delivery Networks in Construction 4.0. Ken Stowe is a construction technology expert, development strategist, and project systems coach at Autodesk. He has over 25 years of experience in construction management and project control on projects as large as over $1.4 billion, including 19 years in software business engagement in over 25 countries, and he's also been a contributor to 4 books. Stowe leads a team at Autodesk that is responsible for construction business development and strategy initiatives worldwide. Together with his team, they have leveraged research in the pursuit of integration of technologies and construction science for measurably improved decision-making, planning, construction execution, and facility performance. And now, without further ado, let's take a look at what Ken has to say on newly developed project delivery with innovation. Let's just start off by, if you could tell a little bit more about yourself and your background and what initially got you interested in the construction and engineering sector in the first place.
I started working in the construction field in the 70s, and by then I had already been exposed to a certain amount of computing, and I didn't really love technology. I just thought of it as a tool. So I was in the field and then in project management in the field office and the home office. But I was always dreaming about what I called integrated construction versus adversarial, fragmented construction, which is what the world that I lived in. In the late 90s, I moved in the construction company that I was with in Boston to buy Revit. And it was really too young to do much with it, really of industrial proportion, but we were the first construction customer in the world to buy Revit. And then I joined Revit a year and a half later, Revit Technology, and then it was acquired by Autodesk in 2002. So since then, I've worked on BIM for construction, the return on investment of BIM, which led me to project performance metrics, and then the idea of big data, big analytics. I'm now working on a project diagnostics dashboard.
That's really fascinating. So you actually were working with Revit at the very early stages of its development or commercialization in the market then?
Yes, we established ourselves as a forward-thinking contractor. We planned 3-dimensional and 4-dimensional storyboards of how we would approach a complex project with safety and logistics in mind. And we used it in interviews or to present our strategy, our project strategy in interviews with 4D storyboarding. And it made an impression on the owners at the time. It was still quite young. It was a visual tool to tell the story about how we would build a job.
Okay, that's really fascinating. I think it's great to speak to somebody who's kind of lived through the earlier days of when that technology was still very embryonic and not very much known.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. And then in the new book, you talked about the project delivery networks in the context of Construction 4.0. Could you introduce that topic to us? So what is it that you mean by project delivery networks within that context?
Sure. So, as construction professionals or design professionals, there's a network, a project delivery network that we're engaged in. Some networks are private work, others are public work. Some of them are classic design bid build with hard money contracts, and some are CM at risk or design build. And the contract language is always the same, and that has an impact on the culture within that network. How much trust you have, how much you collaborate, how much data you share. So when you disaggregate the impact of Construction 4.0, it's so different for those different networks. It's important to acknowledge that right in the beginning of the conversation. In this case, it's the chapter that I wrote. What I've tried to do is to come up with some universal guidance, regardless of whether you're in a public or private or design bid build or design build network. But that's the concept of the network. And hopefully the chapter has good advice for everybody, somewhat universal, to embrace the challenge of Construction 4.0, to keep the firm's wheels turning in terms of winning and executing new work, while at the same time just adapting, re-engineering how you execute, how you share data, how you collaborate.
Okay. And then that's so within the Construction 4.0, let's say if we're talking to a novice, somebody who's not really familiar with that terminology, based upon what you've written and from what you've seen, the industry transition into digitization, how would you define Construction 4.0?
Yeah, I might. In order to have people understand it, I quite often just start with the idea of Industry 4.0, and so Industry 4.0 as a term is a descriptor of what we're living through right now, this challenge to adapt to new technology. But it maybe is worth mentioning to folks that have lived through the digital revolution, which is Industry 3.0, what was it like? What do you wish you could have known back in the 90s when the internet would be coming and you would have more computing power, doubling every year or two? So what you have witnessed is a change in the technology. You witnessed the market forces, the mandate for new deliverables, and the competition, taking advantage of things. You changed your culture. You began to share more data. And the fourth dimension of influence: technology, market force, culture, and principle. The principles within a network. For that, to define that, I talk about how much trust, how much openness is there in your network, or is there still an adversarial? But those four dimensions of influence are defining the challenge of Construction 4.0. We've got all these new technologies coming, and as we adapt to embrace those, a good leader, a good thought out strategy to embrace Construction 4.0 has those four dimensions of influence that they acknowledge and prepare.
Okay. So what can you just repeat? What were the four influencers?
Yes, they're the technology.
Technology, yeah.
The market forces, so the partners that you have, the competition you have,
Yeah.
the owner getting more demanding because they expect more,
Yes, that's a very
higher
good
product.
point. Yeah, yeah.
The culture, which is how much do they respect each other? How much do they do they collaborate and think of themselves as one team trying to achieve a purpose of one project? And then finally, the principles. Are you honest? Do you trust your partners? Are you open with them?
Okay, yeah, yeah. That's very interesting to view it from those four areas of influence. So, as an expert on, let's say, strategy, construction, and also its digitization, can you tell us more about any other new emerging trends or technologies that you have witnessed that are going to take construction beyond what we're seeing now?
Well, I think all of us, depending on how we grew up, when we first went into construction, we kind of formed our opinions of what are the pervasive problems in the industry. And so for me, it was always around rework, sloppiness, fragmentation, trying to tackle problems, but doing it without a real sense of team. So my particular one that I would answer your question with is the common data environment. So this where the data comes together, and there's so much to work out. There's a lot of resistance. People even like maybe the lack of transparency with their current model. But like BIM, there was resistance, and pretty soon there's BIM mandates, and the deliverables are defined. And so I think we'll see the same thing with machine learning and artificial intelligence. We will see a common data environment. Maybe it's mandated by the owner. Certainly it may be led by construction companies that really can appreciate what the pervasive problems that they face in terms of on time, within the budget, safe environment, high quality product. But there's going to be, with that common data environment and machine learning and artificial intelligence, a lot of transparency is about, we're going to face transparency and the delight of learning how to prevent problems. But maybe there's a certain amount of trepidation when transparency means that my accountability is ramped up now. Everybody is going to be able to see. My customer is going to be able to see any failures that I have.
Yeah, and the other thing that you touched upon is that the customer will obviously have a more transparent experience. And also what you mentioned earlier about the customer becoming more demanding, or the changes in the requirements are pushing the industry to kind of have to adopt. Is that something that you're seeing through Autodesk where you are now? Is that the customers are demanding a better service digitally?
We see them demanding BIM excellence. And so that's a way of, that's the first half of demanding data excellence. That's what BIM is a database of objects that hugely exceeds what you can do with the same with a similar two-dimensional deliverable. So we're seeing BIM data mandates. What we are encouraging, and we're just beginning to see now, is we're beginning to see customers realize that if they ask for high quality data of all the transactions, of every error and omission, request for information, change order, delay, that data is going to be so rich with potential for improvement. And so we see some very interested mega project owners that they need a dashboard. They need to control. There's so much going on in a project, and so they need to be able to analyze the data and see ahead of time. They need to be alerted that a project is looking like it's in trouble, and that alert will come from machine learning from other projects that got in trouble. And they're seeing a pattern. The machine is seeing a pattern between your project and historical projects. So if you have a mega project and it's $10 billion and it's 10 years long, you're going to use machine learning and the common data environment to just get better and better and better at execution.
And with topics like machine learning, and they're often paired with the word artificial intelligence, there is a lot of fear-mongering, especially in construction, regarding that subject. Is that something that you've come across, that there is a level of anxiousness about the use of machine learning replacing traditional decision-making?
Sure. I think whenever a new technology comes along, it's a natural human reaction to think, oh gosh, my expertise that I've developed over 30 or 40 years is not going to be valuable anymore. And we don't see it that way. We think that the machine may be able to come up with some alternatives for you if you've got a project that's drifting late. And so are you going to put more people on? Are you going to change the people? Or are you going to just push into overtime? Are you going to accelerate with a second shift? The machine might be able to help you analyze what is your response now. The first level of service is that the machine will tell you you got a problem, or it looks like you've got a problem based on the data that's coming in. And so that will be earlier, and you'll be able to move to mitigate to change course, and the machine will be able to help you evaluate. So it's decision support. It's not decision making.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And obviously, you've mentioned machine learning. Let's take a futuristic approach and we try and project into the next 5 years, where do you see that any other emerging technologies are going to be changing the project delivery of construction? So how do you basically see that landscape shifting in a 5-year span?
Sure. So my list of technology opportunities is about 20 elements long. So,
oh wow!
I could. So there's certainly scanning and mobile, the cloud, the ability to forecast performance. The digital twin will help you evaluate your green performance. There'll be more collaboration, more life cycle thinking. There'll be sensors. But as far as the coaching that I would give, or I try to give in the chapter that I write, is around how do you set up this innovation environment where you evaluate all these opportunities. Even lean construction is, and sustainable thinking and data quality awareness, transparency. These are all opportunities that have to go into this environment where you filter those, evaluating the technology, how young it is, how powerful it is, are there metrics on what it does to the performance. Also inside this innovation environment, I'll call it a box. In this environment that you create in your organization, you've got these internal challenges with this. So this team of innovation movers has got to think about return on investment, the personal emotions in the firm, the fear of transparency. Is there proof of the effectiveness of this? Is there a legacy within the company of that I'm going to have to overcome? So it just turns out to be a lot of resistance because of the legacy of the firms. And what do we have for leadership? Are there going to be job shifts, workflow changes? But what the goal of this innovation environment that you build into your firm has got to have as its purpose the outcomes like leaner, faster, safer, more predictable, attractive career development, transparency, alerts.
Okay. And that, from what you mentioned there about innovation, I feel that follows on to the next question and makes me think that probably I should reword the question and say that as a specialist in construction and its strategies, what do you think leaders most often look with digital transformation strategies? And here I would probably now replace that with innovation strategies, as you've highlighted that it's so relevant to today's world.
Yeah, this question of like how do I coach leaders based on what I've seen for 45 years. The mistake that they make when they see this new technology is they say, okay, it's a technical challenge. I know. So I'm going to put my technical people in charge of this. But it's so big, and it's tackling now when we think about construction 4.0, it's so broad that it should not now be thought of as one technology at a time producing some incremental change in productivity. It's actually what we need is leaders in place that understand the pervasive and persistent problems in the industry, especially in our project delivery networks. They may have very specific pervasive problems. So that's the leadership that I'm recommending. I'm also recommending to think about where the waste is now. So lean construction is a set of principles to try to go after the waste in construction. And I call them the dominoes of waste. So they're quite often a project will have an avalanche of waste, starting with errors and omissions in the documents, which isn't expensive to fix. It might be time consuming. There's RFIs and change orders, or sort of RFIs and their responses. And that's a waste and rework activity, sometimes caused by errors and omissions. The RFIs often lead to change orders, and change orders often lead to delay, and delay leads to acceleration, either in the terms of overtime or second shift. And it's when you've got fatigued in that environment of acceleration, you have safety and quality failure. So I call those the dominoes of waste. And they're really all about construction. I'm also saying to leaders, think of big data, think of construction 4.0, and the challenge, the opportunities that you have is falling into two categories. You can either improve the asset performance that you're creating, the built product of your work. And so in that case, the data you're looking at is program data, form, function, structure. You use that for simulation, energy forecasting. That's your BIM folks. Your BIM strategy creates or uses the data to produce a better product. And on the performance side, on the construction side, there's all this data that's required to track, predict, and execute well. So in this element of the whole data lake, if you will, are project commitments, temporary construction, interactions, field observations, weather, contract language, delays in the field, problems that show up in construction that they don't show up in the model, in the BIM effort. They show up when you're in the field. Changes to scope are in both. There are some data elements that are in both the asset purpose, the asset performance, and they affect the project performance. So change orders, work packaging, errors and omissions, requests for information. That data actually is shared between these two purposes.
It seems like for the modern day leaders that this transition into, let's say, a data-centric way of operating and managing, do you think that that's making construction more, is it showing up that construction is more complex than what it is? Or has construction become more complex as a result of us transitioning into that new era?
I think the technology helps you deal with the complexity that's always been there. You've always had errors, omissions, illogical design, RFIs, change orders, and delays, and overtime. And the calculations that you do as a construction professional are very complex. And so it's just a beautiful thing to have the data and what I call one day you will be further down this journey to analytical excellence so that you can process the complexity and make better decisions.
So do you think that there needs to be a shift in the training and upskilling as well? So should we start to see more data analysts within the working environment?
Yeah, I think you're not old enough probably to remember when scheduling was digitized. We had scheduling specialists.
Yeah.
And then Primavera and a few other easier to use packages that resided on a microcomputer that you could have, you had your own personal computer. Pretty soon we were all learning how to do scheduling, critical path scheduling, just as part of our training. And so we saw the same thing with BIM. So BIM was a bunch of specialists, and now it's becoming just an important tool in your toolbox if you want to be a construction professional. So we'll see the same thing. We'll see data analysts coming from the software side, the software provider side, like Autodesk has many, many data scientists, and our customers are hiring data scientists. But pretty soon, we will have some, it will be a tool in the toolbox. You'll use your analytical skills every day as a project stakeholder.
Yeah. Okay. And finally, then, let's talk about aspiring engineers, designers, or contractors within our field. What advice would you give to them prior to entering our field, and if they truly want to make an impact or a change within our industry? Since you've had a long-spanning career and you've seen that transition, is there some kind of singular truth that you believe is going to become more relevant for the next generation?
Well, I have a strong opinion about this. So, first of all, I would say I would encourage young people or inquiring people to come into the industry and help us change it to improve it. And to understand what needs improving, I would probably recommend Lowry Koskila's article that defined kind of the purpose of lean construction. He's sort of the founding father of lean construction. And he really astutely defines what needs fixing. And safety. He defines the rework, how much of every construction dollar is wasted. So I would say to the young academic, there's a lot of improvement that's possible. I would say read the article, the thesis by Douglas Chelson, The Effects of Building Information Modeling on Construction Site Productivity. And so he talks about the measurable improvements that come from a BIM environment. I call it a model-based environment as opposed to a two-dimensional environment. And he also talks about the modern KPIs. What are the modern KPIs? If you want to improve your performance with the use of BIM, then these are the things that you should be measuring, because they should improve as you embrace building information modeling. The other thing that I would recommend to new researchers is read about the root cause of waste. So if Lowry Koskila helps us understand how much we are wasting, what Amina Fayek does from her article from the University of British Columbia, Amina Fayek, she writes about the root cause of waste and has a fishbone diagram of what are the things that contribute to rework. And for me, that sets up, there's the beautiful statement of like the things that we want to fix with BIM, the things that we want to fix with analytical excellence.
Thank you for tuning in to listen to Beyond BIM podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear more from our latest episodes, then you can visit Beyond BIM, which is available on SoundCloud and iTunes and all the other major podcast providers.